I just think the constituent service fund thing is abused because we don't see it. There's no disclosure.
Right.
Campaign finance
Needs
form.
to be transparent.
Reporters know how to read campaign finance reform, but other people don't. You have to. It's very difficult to go in there and find out who people are. There ought to be huge fines for people who don't fill out the campaign finance forms. They say requested. And under the law, you only have to ask someone to say who they are once. If they don't say, there's no obligation for you to say who's giving you money. It just seems to me that we need a lot more public disclosure.
And in fact, just
on
to
every
add on to
subject
that,
we mentioned, it seems public disclosure is part of the answer.
And in fact, Tom, in corporate money, it's even harder to know who's giving money because in that requirement, all you have to give is the name of the company and their address, which, as you know, from all the problems we've been having, anything could happen. So in my campaign last February, I issued a transparency challenge to all the other candidates, saying basically, if you're gonna take corporate money, you need to do a better job telling people where the money's coming from and put it on your website. So we have it listed on our website, all the corporate donors with more information because of the transparency needs.
We're talking with two candidates for at-large seats on the D.C. Council. David Grosso is an independent. Mary Brooks-Beatty is a Republican. We're taking your calls at 800-433-8850. You can send email to kojo@wmu.org.
Can I bring another topic up?
Yeah, but if you don't mind, I'll be first, but write your topic down because you're both here, and we're going to have Michael Brown. We're going to have him on the program here. You essentially have campaigned against Michael Brown. Vincent Orange is also running. He was on here last week. But the campaigns have been tilted against Michael Brown. So he's not here to defend himself. But tell me, David, or Mary, start with you. Why should Michael Brown be replaced as succinctly as possible?
Well, I think he's lost public trust. I mean, the types of things, a lot of them are personal. They are personal issues, but I think that they do, talking
about his business deals, his late payment of taxes, all those things.
Late payment of taxes. If he's not playing by the rules, how can he make the rules?
Okay, David.
I think he has been more interested in having this job on his resume than he is in actually doing the job, and it's been no better demonstration of that than the actual WMATA board president. He actually removed himself from the WMATA board because he wasn't attending any of the meetings. That just shows ineffective council member work. And it's just all the distractions add up. I mean, that's just the reality. When you have so many pressures on your life and so many issues going on, it's very hard to do a good job.
May I ask the two candidates, are your personal finances in order? If I looked, would there be any lawsuits against you or any failure to pay your taxes owed to the city or the IRS or any of that?
Mine are all in order.
Yep, same with me. I take great pride in that.
They're not very good, but mine are in order.
I just take great pride in that. I pay my bills.
Okay.
Glad you didn't ask me that question. David Grosso, why should Vincent Orange not hold an at-large seat on the council?
I think Vincent Orange over the years has shown an inability to actually close the deal on things, and that's hard to say. But in fact, he's worked hard on issues, but you're just never sure where he's going to come down on it. And I personally don't agree with him on a lot of his approaches towards development. I live in Ward 5. I think a lot of people felt in Ward 5 that we got dumped on a lot. You talk about the various dispensaries. You talk about the strip clubs. You talk about the Home Depot and the Costco. He's very proud of the Home Depot, but in fact, wouldn't it have been great to have a mixed income, mixed use development there on that site instead of the big box stores? I just think he has a different outlook and different priority on what's happening.
Mary Brooks-Beatty, Michael A. Brown has said, look, I may have messed up my personal finances, but I have never been accused of violating the public trust in any way. And so I'm asking people to vote for me on the basis of my public record. Why should his personal finances have anything to do with it?
Well, I do think, again, it shows character. It also shows really how responsible you are. So I think it's going back to characteristics that you don't want on the council. But also, there are some things that he's done that actually kind of motivated me to even run for this office, and that is on the iGambling, because it was the way that legislation was passed, the lack of transparency, the fact that
We're talking about internet gambling.
The internet gambling, yes. The fact that was going to be such a huge policy shift in this city, and it didn't have a committee hearing. It had no public hearings. It was attached to a budget bill. I think that's outrageous.
Why should Vincent Orange not be on the council as an at-large member?
Well, I think Vincent Orange has done some good things for the city. So, but I do think it is time to kind of clean the slate. I do think, there is the issue of the Jeffrey Thompson and, the contributions to Vincent Orange. Again, I don't think he's been accused of anything, but I think, again, you have that whole culture of corruption, and you've lost trust with
Jeffrey Thompson,
people.
the former head of Chartered Healthcare, who is under investigation by the U.S. Attorney for campaign contributions.
I think we ought to say, since Vincent Orange was on last week and is not here to answer your question yourself, that he has said in campaign stops in here on this show that he has a record of support for economic development, including the baseball stadium, that he was the person who in the schools were not getting textbooks, got a law changed that they had to be in early. So there's a number of things that Vince Orange will say he has done as a council member. So since he's not here to defend himself, I just want to give that 30-second.
Do you think
Fair.
that council members should be able to hold outside jobs?
I do not. I've said that from the very beginning.
How about you, David
Ethics
Grosso?
rule.
No, I've committed to working full time, and I think that there should be a way that we can grandfather in those who currently have jobs, so that as they roll off the council, we get full time workers on there. I think it's just the opportunities.
Do you think the council member
Are
David
there.
Catania and Jack Evans and Mary Che, who's a law professor, you think they don't give full time to their jobs?
I don't think it's. I don't think it's possible, but I just think that I'm not saying they're not doing a good job. They're doing a fine job, but the problem is, what better could they be doing if they weren't, if they're working full time?
What about the concept of citizen legislators, that you bring people in from the private sector who have political careers, but they have experience from the private sector, so they don't just become career politicians where they're there 100% of the time, worried about how they're going to get reelected.
Well, I think that makes sense in places where you have a legislative session that's a month or 6 weeks
Why not?
or so.
Good. That's exactly what I was going to bring up. Why doesn't this city figure out a way to have a legislative session just for the first few months of the year, like Maryland and Virginia and most states do, and then the rest of the year just have a small committee to handle municipal affairs that might come up?
Well,
I think
because
that
we
makes
have,
sense.
we are actually operating as more than just a city. We're operating as a state.
City,
We're
county,
operating as
and
a
state.
county. And I think that we have a lot of work to do here to make sure we stand up for our rights. I mean, the reality is we don't have a vote in Congress. We don't have senators, and so I think you should have a strong legislative body that works year round.
Another problem with the outside employment is actually the conflict of interest. I mean, and in the case of several of the current council members, that has come up.
Well, it has come up, but no one has defined a specific conflict of interest where they've been an actual charge.
Not where there's been a charge, but there's been plenty of indication that there may be a conflict of
Okay.
interest.
Here is Alan in Washington, D.C. Don your headphones, please. Alan, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. My question is, the poll suggests that the real challenge is between Mr. Grosso, Mr. Brown for second place, and Vincent Orange has first place. And so my question is that I know a lot of people are very interested in the zoning, the comprehensive plan rewrite, and a lot of people, especially on the smart growth side, a lot of urban professionals who come to the city and really want it to be a great place. And I'm looking at Mr. Grosso's response to the Current, or an article in the Current, and it seems that both Mr. Grosso and Mr. Brown are big supporters of affordable housing. But one big part of that is whether or not we require that parking be built in with housing when people are willing to live without cars. And I want to ask Mr. Grosso, there's a quote in here that says, you don't think no parking makes a lot of sense. Limited parking does make sense. But what about no parking when people don't want parking? What about...
Babes Billiards, right across the street from where we sit, is now scheduled for redevelopment, and there are going to be no parking spaces for residents of that building, and I suspect that's one of the things that Alan is talking about, David Grosso, no parking.
I think this goes to the overall zoning discussion about, do we include neighborhood by neighborhood in the discussion or not, and how you do it in a way that makes sure that everybody gets their thoughts heard. I think there are times when parking can be limited or even no parking if it creates more affordable options in those buildings. The argument that the developers make, I think, is an important one to note. They say basically, look, we are required to put a certain number of parking spaces in. We spend all this money, and then the cost of the housing goes up, and then we have a bunch of spaces that are never taken. The parking spaces are never used, especially around a metro like the one right here. You're sitting right on the metro. You have got a lot of other opportunities for transportation. There's just no reason to overburden it with parking.
It sounds like some people would say that's a war on cars, that people have cars, they have social events to go to. Metro, it's not necessarily reliable for cross-town traffic or going in other places other than like where the metro is, and that there ought to be some cars available that were not New York. But I believe AAA said this before, this sounds like a war on cars when you're eliminating the possibility of cars.
Well, I mean, this is a city. This is an urban area, and I think there should be all the options available. And to require a blanket requirement that you have to have a certain number of parking places in every single building doesn't recognize the reality.
And we've had this problem over in Columbia Heights where our commercial development was. There was a big demand that there be 1,000 parking spaces underneath.
Now half of them go empty.
And most of them are empty, and people use them in emergencies.
I mean, in fact, I use a car every day. I mean, I think it's important that we have options for cars, but I would never rent or buy an apartment, where I didn't have a place to put my car.
And also we have the car to go and
lots of other options.
The residents really do take a different view. They take more of a view, the ones I have spoken to, that this is a war on cars. That basically that those, that's shifting now. If there's no parking available at Babes, for instance, where are they going to park? So that doesn't mean that a person won't own a car. It just means they're going to be parking it now in the neighborhood.
Thank you very much for your call, Alan. Data released earlier this fall by the Census Bureau showed that the city is becoming more and more economically divided, and that since 2007, poverty among D.C. children has gone up by a third. What would you say explains that economic inequality in the district, and what would you do about it if you are elected to the council, Mary Brooks-Beatty?
Well, I think this is it's a big problem in D.C., but it's a problem all across the United States, that the economic conditions of the country are worsening. But, there are a lot of things, again, that you can do. I mean, there's, short of, we can't control the overall U.S. economy, of course, but there are a lot of programs that, by job creation, I think those are the kinds of things that we need to be looking at. There's an organization called Defeat Poverty that has like 3 or 4 points in their plan of how to do that, and job training and so forth. So I think you can, there are policies that can help us get out of this situation.
Do you think that there are policies that can lead to job creation in the district? Can you name one of those policies that you would favor?
Well, I think right now we've mandated certain first source mandates jobs. What I would do is try to go back and improve upon that law so that basically that the job training looks at what the future jobs are going to be and train for those jobs. So I think that's one of the key things you can do.
David Grosso, same question.
Yeah, the first thing that I'd like to raise is the fact that poverty does exist, and there is a major issue about it here in D.C. And the government has to step up and provide services and make sure that our people are taken care of in every respect of the way, whether it be health care, food, mental health services, housing, whatever we do, we need to make sure that there's a way for people to thrive in the district. That includes creation of more affordable housing and creation of better job opportunities. And job opportunities come, in my mind, through 2 different ways, certainly. A lot more than that, but 2 specific. Our education system has got to come around. We have got to reform education in the district from pre-K all the way up to until somebody becomes a productive member of society. That is a challenge that we've taken on, and it's a challenge that I look forward to working on very, very intently when I'm on the council.
Well,
the second...
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. The second thing is, we have an opportunity here, a golden opportunity, and we just read a form the other night about this. The community college in the District of Columbia is an opportunity for people to get the training they need, get the education they need in order to spin out into great jobs from there. And not just jobs, but careers. And I think that's when you start seeing poverty be alleviated, and you start seeing people being able to rise up and take hold of their lives.
Adult education it seems to me to be important too. You've got people who, we talk about vocational education, where people who are not going to college need to learn some skills. But we do have enough young people, some of whom have children already but don't have jobs, but there's no real effort to get them trained. The Department of Employment Services has programs where they try to match people with employers, and they subsidize the money for the employer. I mean, there are a lot of programs around. I guess if you whisk them all together, there might be something there, but it doesn't sound like it's a real important.
Well, this is a problem. This is what this is a problem of Councilmember Brown. That's a pretty serious problem. He was the head of the Workforce Development Committee during a time when the community college was coming online. And Tom, exactly what you're talking about is the value of not just the community college, but UDC and other universities in the area in order to help us get our population, into jobs and get educated and get training and get the things they need. During Michael Brown's tenure on the committee, he's the one that allowed. We had a wonderful president of the community college, Dr. Jonathan Guevara, who was here for a period of 3 years, who was getting private investment, who is just somebody who I have a lot of respect for. And the number one reason he left and went to Florida, besides probably the weather, is the fact that Michael Brown and the rest of the council was not supporting him and supporting the community college the way they should have been in order to make sure that these job opportunities came open.
Mary Brooks-Beatty, when it comes to economic opportunity, do you think the city is getting good return on its investment in the baseball stadium, and would you support the use of public funds to build a stadium for DC United, the soccer team?
I do think that the returns on the baseball stadium have been great. I do think that was well worth the investment. I think we need more study on the soccer stadium. I still haven't gotten the sense that it's something that the population necessarily wants to invest in.
Well, they're still playing in RFK, and because of the weather, they were supposed to play their first home game at RFK next week, but Sandy has forced them to reschedule the game tomorrow against New York. That starts at 8 p.m. at Old RFK Stadium. David Grosso?
Can I answer this before he answers? Also, Jack Evans, who has supported the baseball stadium, the Verizon Center, and the Convention Center, has said about a soccer stadium that the owners of the soccer stadium have to step forward and put the money up. The city will help with the infrastructure, but the city shouldn't build a soccer stadium because it doesn't have the same economic scale that a baseball stadium does.
I think this is a great question. Of course, I was the committee clerk for the Committee on Economic Development when we brought baseball back to the District of Columbia, and I'm really proud of the role I played there. And, there's a couple facets of that deal that I think make it successful that we worked hard to have happen in the council. The first is the business community was engaged and involved in this from the beginning. They agreed to be taxed in order to build the stadium. It made it possible. We wouldn't have been able to do it. The second thing is that we are, as we make more and more money on the stadium, off the baseball team, as they win more and more games, we are actually paying down the debt faster because we made a requirement. We put a requirement in that they do that, and that's a really valuable part of this. So, when it comes to soccer, I am a huge fan of DC United and think that DC United should have a home here in the District of Columbia, and I'm very supportive of Jack's proposal to get the infrastructure done by the city if that's necessary, and work with the owners to figure out how to build a stadium.
What about the Redskins to RFK? If Dan Snyder says he'll build a $2 billion stadium or $1.5 billion stadium at the site of RFK, if you let him build there, would you be supportive of that?
He pay for the whole thing?
Well,
Dream on. No way. He'll never do that. He'll never do that. I don't think we can deal with that guy very well.
What about you, Mary?
Yeah, I would think that, if he would pay for the whole thing, fine, but...
Well, I'm not saying that. I don't know if I want to deal with Dan Snyder. I just think that's a mistake.
And I'm afraid we've come to the time where each of you has run out of time to freelance, and you now have 1 minute in which to make a final statement. I'll start with you, Mary Brooks-Beatty.
Yeah. Well, I offer a real fresh start for DC. And in particular, it's because I'm different than the other candidates. One of the things that I'll never be is part of the Good Old Boys Network. I'm basically never going to be part of the cronyism. And, basically I'm doing this for one reason and one reason only, and that's because I love the city. I want to use the experience that I have in legislative affairs and all of the policy work I've done to contribute to the city. I think we've got a lot of problems. I know I can help solve those problems, so that's why I'm running. But another reason I'm different is because I am the true non-majority candidate. The other candidates are Democrats who are disguised as independents, and so you're getting part of the groupthink. You're still getting a one-party system, and that type of thing leads to corruption. So, I offer a real fresh start for the city.
Thank you very much. David Grosso?
Well, thank you, Kojo. Thank you, Tom. It's been a real honor to be on the show today, and I appreciate the invitation. The D.C. government, as I said, is at a crossroads, and the people of the District of Columbia are starting to recognize that. Everywhere I go throughout the city during early voting and all throughout the year, we've been campaigning since last year. We had 101 meet and greets all over the District of Columbia. People are saying that they're sick and tired of having council members that are not acting in a proper way and actually having ethical lapses. So we move forward with great hope in this campaign and think that as we get to November 6th, we're going to be able to pull this off. I just want to note about the grassroots element of my campaign. We have had over 800 donors from all over the city, averaging $131 per donation. It's remarkable. We have people putting yard signs in their yards that never before in their lives have ever put a yard sign in their yard. And in fact, just the other day at the Ward 4 council, at the Ward 4 race, anyway, we're extremely proud of what we're doing, and I hope everyone will come out and vote on November 6th and support my campaign.
David.